Good evening, Loudoun Soccer parents and players. Welcome to another college recruiting webinar here at Loudoun Soccer. Joining me this evening, my name is Dave Bucciaro. I'm the Director of College Placement with the club. And joining me this evening is Neil Bhattacharjee, who's the head women's soccer coach at Binghamton University, and Anthony Adams, who's the head men's soccer coach at UMBC. We were originally supposed to have the assistant coach from William and Mary on the men's side join us. Unfortunately, he had a last-minute conflict, so wasn't able to attend tonight. But I'm very appreciative and grateful that Anthony was able to jump in at the last second and help us out. This evening, we're going to do a couple things. Every year in the fall, myself and a couple college coaches lead a college night where we go over the entire college recruiting process. We go over timelines for what players should be doing freshman through senior years. We talk about the differences between Division 1, 2, and 3, and all kinds of stuff regarding the college recruiting process. What I thought would be helpful tonight is if we go into more detail concerning things like phone calls and visits and how players ultimately the challenge they face in narrowing down a college and how to do that and when the right time is to do that. And then also a couple things that we haven't talked about a lot in detail, but are in the news quite a bit these days. The transfer portal being one thing, and then name, image, and likeness, which you hear about a lot these days. And then we'll also talk about ID camps, which we've touched on before at our college night. There's different setups for ID camps and talking about if one is better than the other and ultimately how to choose an ID camp that's best for the player. And then I'll also ask these coaches if they can think of any recruiting mistakes that maybe they've come across during their time working with different programs or things that stand out in terms of mistakes in the college recruiting process. As always, you can ask any questions at any point, but I'll also leave time at the end to answer any questions that you may have. So just some quick introductions here. Neil Bhattacharjee, as I mentioned before, currently he's the head women's coach at Binghamton, where he's been since 2015. Before Binghamton, he was the assistant at Syracuse and Boston College, and he also started locally around here at George Washington University as an assistant coach there. So obviously a lot of experience with his last 4 stops, all being Division I universities, and a lot of it experience as both an assistant and a head coach. Anthony Adams was just recently, a couple months ago, named the head men's coach at UMBC, but he's been at UMBC since 1997, which is a long time, either as an assistant or in the role as the associate head coach. During that time, he's been recognized as one of the top assistant coaches in college soccer. He's helped recruit a number of players that have gone on to play professionally and also earn all conference honors. Before becoming a coach at UMBC, he played at UMBC from 1992 to 1995. So I really appreciate these 2 coaches' time and helping out our club here. The first question that I want to ask them and something that I want to talk about is if they can think of things that have really helped their programs have success. Both of them come from successful programs. Binghamton, where Neil is, just this last year won the regular season America East Conference. And UMBC, where Anthony is, for a long time has had a history of success, not only regionally, but nationally as well, playing in NCAA tournaments and advancing in the NCAA tournament. So the question I have is, what are some things that you feel have helped your programs get to the level that they're at? And then a second piece of that is, what do you look for when you're recruiting players? So Neil, if you want to start us off, that'd be great.
Sure. So first of all, I just want to thank Loudon for having me, and thank you, Dave and Beth, for having myself and Anthony on. It's good to be here and have this discussion. And unfortunately, I know the college night you had to be rescheduled. So hopefully the air is better down where you are. Certainly is up in our neck of the woods as well. We've been having to deal with the forest fires in Quebec and that smoke rolling in, but it's cleared up the last couple of days. Hopefully the same down there. So thanks again for having me. And in terms of what we look for, so I'd say one thing we look for is we look for the Binghamton type of kid. And one thing that we really talk about within our program on the recruiting side is that we're a program where we like to have balance. So you are going to be a student athlete. So the academics are pretty rigorous at Binghamton. The admissions are pretty stringent. So we look for people that take the academic side pretty seriously, and also are pretty passionate in terms of what they do on the soccer pitch. So we're looking for kids that are pretty committed to both ends, and understand that it's not easy to be able to do both those things at a high level. It's not an easy task. So people that can manage balancing that and really get their schedule and organization in order to be successful on both sides. In terms of things that have helped us, recently as a program, I think what we've done a pretty good job is that we can identify good soccer players and players that are interested in our program. I think that's the easy part. It's getting to know the kids and knowing about their character. Knowing about their family background. Like I said, the soccer part is the easy part, but getting to know them, on conversations, on calls, we do our homework as far as talking with the club coaches, sometimes even high school coaches, just so we can get a good understanding of the type of character of the person that we're looking at. And then we'll pay attention to little things. How do they interact with the referee? How do they interact with their teammates after a tough, rough loss? So we'll look at some of those things as well. And we constantly talk within our program about the process. Every day is an opportunity to get better. So we want kids that are going to take that to task. That they believe in the process. It's an opportunity to improve and get better. With our environment, will help them get better. And the kids that seem to really do well with that are the kids that love the game. And that's another big thing we look for, because at the college level, it's a big commitment. At times, it may even feel like a job. In certain moments. So we love kids that love the game. So the way we think of it is, how many of our kids would love to play the game of soccer if us coaches, if we weren't there? That's one way to look at it. So we have kids that just love the game. They love to play pickup. They love to play. Sometimes they'll mix up pickup with players from the guys team, whatever. So if we have a good blend of that between the character, the passion for the game, those are things that have really helped us in terms of having success recently.
That's great. I've had other college coaches in similar panels, and many of them, and I expressed it to the players, bring up the character piece, how they interact with referees, with their teammates. We've heard that before. It's not just about what you can do with the ball. I'm glad you brought that up. Anthony, what about from your end?
I mean, Neil hit a lot of things right on the head. I think most programs, we have like what we call 3 pillars, and I'm sure it's pretty similar at most schools, not only the soccer, but the academic piece and also the community piece. Our guys are very active in the community. There's different ways to do that, and I'm sure most good programs will do that. I think we had a record for us. We had just under a 3.5 as a team in the fall in season. So I think obviously recruiting people that are strong academically coming out of high school, versus recruiting a kid that's maybe a lower end academic and then hoping they turn the corner. I think it's for us, where retention is a factor. They have something called APR, you know what I mean? So graduation rates and all that. And it's pretty important for us. So I think recruiting kids that are strong academically. If you're looking at recruiting and how it makes you stick out a little bit, if I see the same kid and they're both soccer wise on the same level, and it could be a character thing or it could be an academic thing that makes them stand out one way or the other. In terms of recruiting, and again, some of this is repetitive, but I mean, we look for high character, talented, competitive, team first, selfless individuals, quite frankly. And I think any good team is going to have a strong locker room. And when you recruit those types of people, you're always still, and I'm sure Neil's, we're always building our culture. Always, daily, you're always building your culture, but your culture is your people. And if you do a really good job of recruiting really good people on the first time around, it makes life a bit easier. And as Neil will tell you, we spend a lot of time with our players. And if you're going to spend this much time with people, you better enjoy their company, And I think so. I think it just makes it, when you have the kind of team that regardless of how you're doing that season, you look forward to going to training, you look forward to seeing the kids, you look forward when they come into your office. That's when you've done a good job recruiting good people.
Thanks. June 15th is a big date in the recruiting calendar. It's only a couple of days away. I know there's probably some players that are watching this right now that are nervous about this day as it approaches. For each of you, will you be contacting your top recruits? Do you reach out to the majority of recruits that you're looking at? And do you anticipate recruits being a part of the class that maybe you're going to see later in the year, or you'll find later in the year, and reach out to them, not now, not in the next week or two? Can you kind of touch on that?
Sure. So on the women's side, I'd say it's probably more accelerated than it is on the men's side. So I'm sure you'll notice some differences between kind of how we do things, after I explain it versus how Anthony might do it on the men's side, just in regards to timing. But with June 15th coming up, I can tell you from our side, we probably have a list between me and my assistants, a list of probably about 60 players that we will be contacting in June. We won't be able to contact all of them on June 15th. Some of them might be phone calls that day. Some of them might be emails or text messages. Hey, we've seen you play a number of times. We're interested in you. Would you be available to set up a time to talk this weekend, or perhaps next week, just to kind of stagger those calls out, because it's as you can imagine, it would be pretty difficult to talk to 60 people all in the course of one day. So for us, we go in with this with somewhat of a wide net. And just like we tell prospects, like, you want to go into this with a wide net. You don't want to start off just with a list of 2 or 3 schools. Have a list bigger than that, and then you can kind of narrow things down and focus things down from there. It's the same thing from our side. So we're going to have discussions with players. Again, we're going to find out about character, find out about the academics, and then we start to narrow that scope down a little bit more. Typically, we carry a roster of about 27, 28. So that means usually in a recruiting cycle, we bring about 6 to 7 players. Each recruiting cycle, 2025 will be a bigger cycle for us because we lose a big class that year. We're a little bit unbalanced between the classes. So we'll probably be bringing in a class of 9 or 10 for 2025. So June 15th is one important date. The other big date is August 1st, and that's when you can start doing visits. And those visits are critical. So usually for us, we do not make offers until players at least have an opportunity to come and visit campus and meet with the coaches face to face. You will hear about some players that will get offers even as early as June 15th. How that happens, sometimes the club coach might have a connection with the college coach, or they might have seen that player at a couple prospect clinics, and then they feel comfortable making offers that early. But that's usually not doesn't happen too often, but it does happen. But what I can tell you from our side is that we like to have players visit starting in August, and then throughout the fall. Everybody does things a little bit differently. For us at Binghamton, we like to have players come in for a first visit. A lot of that is meeting with the coaches and the staff, and then come in and do a second visit later in the fall, and that's much more, interacting with the players. That's just what works for us. Everybody does things a little bit differently, and then usually once we get to that second visit, that's where we can talk specifics about an offer, things like that. So usually for us, we don't make offers until typically after our season has concluded. So that would be like November, December timeframe. So we've been looking at players all through the spring for 2025. We'll continue to do that at the playoff events this month. And then for players we continue to remain interested in, we'll get to see them at the ECU event in Tennessee in December, the Florida event in January. So we might start to have some offers out by then, and then throughout the spring. Some of the Power 5 schools might operate, say, earlier than we do, but that's typically kind of the timing that we work around. And then, the last thing that I'll just say before Anthony chimes in is we definitely have players that we did not contact on June 15th that ended up at Binghamton. So we may not have seen that player, enough times by the time you got to June 15th. Or, maybe they were at a certain level in the spring, and then we saw them in November, December, and, whoa, who's this kid? And someone that's made a lot of development within the course of a year. So June 15th, it's not an end all be all by any means. It's just a starting point. It's the way I look at it. And hopefully for you guys as prospects, you can look at it from that frame as well.
Great, thanks. Just to be clear, for some of you that aren't familiar with the NCAA rules, I don't know if I was clear about this, but previous to June 15th, which is coming up, college coaches cannot directly communicate with players and recruits. But after June 15th, they can pick up the phone and call recruits directly. They can talk about recruiting, everything, and they can also text them, which they're not able to do up until June 15th. And that's for sophomores going into their junior year, so rising juniors. So Anthony, do you want to add anything to the state?
Yeah, first thing I would add is I think and Neil, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think D3, they can start contacting kids when they're like freshmen in high school, because otherwise there's all sorts of coaches doing the wrong things with my daughter right now with texting. So I do know D3, they have the advantage. I think as soon as you hit high school age, they can start reaching out. But yeah, June 15th, I mean, our net's probably not as big. We're probably going to be in that like 15 to 20 range of kids. I think, us being a state school and having such good soccer from like Baltimore down to Northern Virginia, there's just so much good soccer here. We try to really target a lot of the local clubs. Obviously, the kids that we're calling on June 15th are probably getting multiple calls. So if you don't get a call, I wouldn't be that worried about it. I think it's just coaches are, they're doing camps, they're doing this, they're doing that. They're finding out about kids. I know on the guy side, just from a physical maturity standpoint, there's a lot of change that goes on between 15 and 18 years old. That may be a little different on the women's side. But I know like there'll be some kids that I call on the 15th that are still 15 years old. And, they could be 5'8" and they could be 6'1" by the time they're 18. You know what I mean? So I think that's why that's one of the reasons where I would say the recruiting calendars are maybe a little different, just because I have to wait and see how a kid maybe physically matures, or maybe by 16 on the women's side, maybe they're a little bit closer to where they're going to be. But I know on the guy's side, that could really be different. So, and then because of that, there's just to hit on Neil's point, I'll be at a tournament in the fall or early December and see a kid that wasn't even on my radar and be like, whoa, where did this kid come from? So I think it's an ever-changing, evolving thing. But like I said, the June 15th is just a date. I wouldn't, if you get a call, it doesn't mean you've made it. If you don't get a call, it doesn't mean you're not going to play college soccer. So it's nice if you get a call, but if you don't get a communication, I wouldn't sweat it.
Okay, thanks. A question that just came in, Anthony, if you could take this, that'd be great. When should a player contact a coach after June 15th? And can a player call? And then the second part of that is, how aggressive should a player be?
I mean, I wouldn't like follow up like June 16th. You know what I mean? I think the summer's, I wouldn't say it's a downtime, you know what I mean? But there are vacations and camps and and recruiting as well. I think it's okay to, maybe towards the back half of June, or maybe if they're in a tournament, or if they're in an ECNL event, or EDP event, regional, whatever's coming up, it's okay to, hey, I just want to let you know I'm so interested, and here's my schedule. So you are kind of reaching out, expressing a direct interest. If you're trying to get the coach's attention, that this is really like one of your top 3 or 5 schools, you're going to have to mention something specific to that school. Hey, I really, my focus is mechanical engineering. I've researched your school. I know it's really strong. Whatever that is, it's going to have to be something that kind of gets the attention of the coach. What was the second question you asked me, Dave?
How aggressive should a player be?
Yeah, I think
reaching out to college coach.
I think once or twice a month is good. I think the ones where I get like the weekly update is kind of a turnoff for me. Like, I think, because I know that I'm not the only one getting it. It's just like a form thing. So I would say I'd rather have more of a personal email, even if it's once a month, twice a month, than having one that comes out every week with like a general update that I know is going to everywhere. So I think that's what I would say. No more. For me, twice a month is if you're really interested in the school, is a good number.
Okay, great. So the phone calls. Can each of you talk about how do the phone calls usually go? If you were to advise the players on this webinar how they should prepare for a phone call, an initial phone call from a college coach after June 15th, what are some things that are discussed in the conversation?
Yeah, so for Binghamton, I usually start out, I talk about stuff not related to soccer. So I talk about the university, the academics, and part of the reason I do that is, I'm coming at it like, yes, of course, you're a high-level soccer player, you're interested in playing the game at this level, but would you still enjoy the school if soccer, for whatever reason, wasn't still there because of injury or anything else that happened? So I always start talking about the campus, the size of the school, the location, and the academics. So those are always starting points. And then, I start to talk about the soccer piece, talking about our recent history. And then specifically where, as I'm talking to each individual prospect, where this is where we could see you having impact within our program. This is the position that we could see you play for us. And here are the reasons why, because the elements that you have in your game. And I'd say typically those conversations, they're open, introductory type of conversations. I'm not going to be there for an hour, 2 hours having that talk. It's typically around, maybe about 15 minutes or so. So I can at least let them know kind of the background about our school, about our program, and mostly about our interest. Where I think it's important from the player is when you talk to us. So I want to know why you're interested in my school. The conversations that I struggle with is if a player has done zero background research. The internet is pretty easy, right? Every information is very readily accessible. So take a few minutes, before you have that call with the college coach, see about the school, see about their soccer program. How do they do recently? Think about the position you want to play. And, are there other players that on the roster at your position, or is there going to be a need for that particular position? Look up the academics. So, take your time to research that. And then be prepared to have, a couple questions. I always like when I talk to a prospect and, hey, can you tell me about what a typical day looks like? Or, where do you see me fitting in within your program? Or, I have interest in this particular major. Do you guys offer it? Do you have kids on your team that study this particular academic endeavor? Look at it from those points. And then I always want to know, like, what are the important factors, like for you as a prospect? Like, does distance from home matter? Does the type of soccer level, does that matter? the academic component. There's, how important is that to you? I want to get a sense of that from each prospect as well. So, when you get on a conversation with the coach, yeah, the coach can carry that conversation initially, but be ready to bring in your own feedback, your own interest level, and show that you've done some initial research, and then any follow-up questions.
Okay, Anthony?
Great. Yeah, I agree with everything Neil said. I would just add or reinforce. I think even in the initial conversation, especially if it's not like a cold call, sometimes what I'll do is I'll text a kid first and then kind of set up the call, because I know texting's huge, right? So kids will respond pretty quick on the text, and then I'll set up the call. And then from there, like if I feel like I had to carry the whole conversation, that's normally like a sign for me that I'm not sure about the kid's personality, or maybe they're not that interested, you know what I mean? Or whatever. So I would just say to any player on the call, make sure you respond to everyone, be respectful, be thankful, be humble, you know what I mean? Because I think coaches talk to each other too. And there's a lot of really good kids that I haven't gotten over the years that I would help or recommend to a lot of places because of the way they handle themselves. And I would even help them down the road if they wanted to get into coaching and they made a connection or whatever. So I think just make sure you treat everybody with respect, be humble, be appreciative. To get a phone call or from a college at any level is an honor. D1, D2, D3, whatever. I think it's an honor. So treat it as such. And eventually, as you narrow your choices down, be honest with those coaches too. But you should always have a couple questions to ask. The worst thing that can happen is that the coach talks to you for a couple minutes and says, "Hey, do you have any initial questions about UMBC?" And no, not really. Okay, have a great day. You know what I mean? So I would always have one or two questions prepared. Same thing when you go on a visit. Have a couple questions. If anything, it shows that you do have some interest, and as Neil said, you have done some research.
So normally in the conversations, a college coach starts a dialogue with a player through phone calls, things like that. And then at some point during the recruiting process, if the coach continues to be interested in the player, they invite the player to campus. I mentioned this on the fall recruiting night. There's two types of visits: an official visit and an unofficial visit. An official visit is when the soccer program or the athletic department pays for part of the costs, like transportation or housing, or all of it. And on an unofficial visit, none of the costs are covered by the athletic department. So parents and player, travel on their own and, take care of their own housing. Can each of you go into what an official or unofficial visit looks like for your program? What do the recruits see on the visits, and what is your advice for giving these players, our Loudoun players, an idea of what a college visit looks like?
Yeah, so if I can just back that up even a little bit more. So the rule was you could only do unofficial visits junior year, and then official visits senior year, and you could take up to five different institutions your senior year. The rule has now changed where you can do official visits starting junior year, so junior and senior year. Now, here's the thing for my school, as you guys saw my background, I worked at a couple ACC schools. Those schools have bigger budgets, so they can bring in people to fly in on official visits. So an official visit means the institution is going to cover the expenses. So a flight, meals, staying overnight, all of that. So one thing that we've done at Binghamton is we have to be careful in terms of our budget. We don't have a budget of that an SEC school or an ACC school might have. So what we do is we still have kids come in junior year, but it's still an unofficial visit. And then if anyone that commits to us, we bring that class back for official visits their senior year. So it's really just for our committed players to do that their senior year. Again, every school and institution is going to be a little bit different. Just with us being at the mid-major level and mindful of budgets and all of that, that's how we do things. So when we do that initial unofficial visit junior year, A lot of it, honestly, is with the staff. You know, you meet with the coaches, you meet with the strength and conditioning coach, you meet with the academic advisor. You get a campus tour, you get a tour of the facilities. So you get a pretty good feel about what we're about. If you come on the day of a game day, you know, we'll get you tickets so you can watch us play. So you can get an opportunity to see what we're like on the field. If it's not a game day, you know, we have players come in and watch practice. Sometimes you can actually learn more watching a training session than you can during a game. So you can get a good sense of all of that. So those are the things that we'll do on that initial visit. The other thing that we do, as I mentioned, a campus tour. We have our players give that campus tour, and I think that's important. Like, you want to get a connection with the players. Like, are they like me? Could I see myself potentially living with this person and traveling with this person and going to team meetings and team meals? Because that's what you do with your team. You do a lot. You do a lot with your club team. You do even more with your college team. So we have our players do that campus tour, and I encourage the prospects to ask questions to our current players. Hey, what's it like here? Hey, what's it like being coached by Neil? Is he a crazy screamer on the sideline? I want our players to give that information to the prospects, because the players ultimately are the best ambassadors of the program. So you're going to hear from the coach, and but you know, if you can actually meet with the players during that unofficial visit, even better. And then if it's a player that, you know, as they go through the process, if Binghamton remains a top choice for them, they continue to be a top prospect for us, then they'll come in for a second visit. And that's really a lot with the players. So hanging out overnight, doing team meals, stuff like that. Again, just getting a good sense of our team, our culture, hanging out with our current roster. Because again, you just do so much with your team. And then by that point, I feel like players have a pretty good idea of, okay, yeah, this is a place that, you know, I want to be a part of because I can see the culture. These are people that I want to be around, or not. And that's important, that you can get that sense, and then you can make a pretty good decision in the end.
Okay, great. Visits at UMBC, Anthony.
We do a ton of unofficials. We kind of, it's almost like speed dating, you know what I mean, a little bit. And it's like, we call some kids in middle of June. We try to get them up in August. And we have this like basically like a 2-hour visit down where they can get a tour. They can see all the facilities. They can meet some of the guys. They can meet with us. And we kind of like started going to a quicker version of it. Because I think if you have a kid up sometimes 5-6 hours on an unofficial, that's a lot. Now we're in an area that's highly populated where there's a school every 10 minutes. You know what I mean? So we have that luxury. I think from the official visit, I mean, we don't do as many anymore, to be honest with you. A lot of guys get a lot out of coming up for a couple hours. We always try to get kids to come to games. 100%. We want them to see us play. We'd love to see them watch a training session. But it seems like on the guys' side, the senior year official visit, I mean, a lot of people. Some of the top players usually decided before they're seniors. And before that rule change, I think even college coaches were in a mindset that they weren't doing them, you know, even though you can now. So we just don't do as many as we used to. We have a kid coming in a couple of weeks from the West Coast, which is out of our region that we normally recruit from, but it's a son of an alum that I played with. So that was the connection. And he's coming up, and instead of staying on campus with the guys, because our guys aren't here, you know, he's going to be in a hotel, and then a lot of our guys, because we have so many local, are going to come up. So when he's here, they're here, and they'll be able to see him and meet him. But it's a little bit different in the summer with a visit than I would say during the day. But Neil hit it head on. I mean, you're going to hit all the departments on those visits, and also I think because you get with the 5. You know, with the old rule, when it was with the 5, I mean, a lot of guys locally would say they don't want to use an official on the school that they're 20 minutes away from. You know what I mean? They'll come up and maybe pay for their own lunch, spend the night. They could still spend the night at our school and still have it unofficial, because you're allowed to have a visitor if you're a student. So you know, that you can always stretch the official visits too.
Okay, a couple questions that came in that I just want to address before we move on. Anthony, why don't you take this one? The question is, after a player verbally commits to a program, how often should they be communicating with the coach? And should they continue to send their game and tournament schedule?
I mean, I think the communication will pick up as the spring of their senior year comes to a conclusion. You know what I mean? There'll be talks about roommates and orientations, and also, and they'll ask for the, voluntary fitness plans and stuff from the summer and all that stuff. Clearly, I think we love staying in touch with our guys that are verbally committed. We want to keep seeing them play, even though we need to be watching other kids. We always seem to want to see the kids that are coming. We get excited about watching the guys that are committed. So I would say to definitely still communicate. I think obviously once you verbally commit, you're not there yet, but you are part of the program. So I think getting to continue to build that relationship with the coach is important. You don't have to wait now till August to continue that building of the relationship. So that's just going to continue to happen.
Next question. This is a good one, Neil. You can address this. What's your advice for turning down schools? Players can only pick one school, so that means they're saying no to a lot of other schools. How do you think players should handle that? And the question I had was, when's the time to start narrowing choices down?
Yeah, so I think, going in with the wide net initially, especially with June 15th coming up, I think it's the way to go. And then you can start to narrow things down from there. You don't want to visit, 20, 30 schools. That's crazy. You guys are busy enough with school, playing club soccer, the expenses of it. So you want to narrow it down to a list of schools that are going to fit the criteria that you're looking for. So the first thing that you got to have honest answers to yourself about what are the important factors for you for this. All right. So are you good enough? From an academic standpoint, are you smart enough to be accepted into an Ivy League institution? If you are, then you can look at those schools. If not, have that, real discussion about, okay, well then these are the schools that are going to be, a realistic fit for me from the academic side. One thing that I know sometimes players don't think about, but the parents certainly think about, is the financial piece. Especially now where private schools can cost anywhere from $70,000 to $80,000 a year. Now, obviously, if you qualify for a scholarship, that's going to help with that. But have an understanding in terms of what the financial piece will be. Have a real conversation with your club coach about where they could see you as far as the level you could play at. If you want to play D3, that's a great fit. There are a tremendous amount of very strong D3 programs. If you want to play at a mid-major, if you want to play for a Power 5, that's where if you don't have quite a sense of that, have that conversation with your club coach. Understand, can I play there? Would I be happy on the bench because I like the school so much, or do I want more? Do I want to actually play? And then that's going to be another consideration that you're going to have to make. Think about the type of campus, and then distance from home. And then once you have an opportunity to kind of answer those questions, then you can start narrowing it down. And I'd say 8 to 10 schools would be realistic. And then if you can visit 5 to 6 of them, once you start to have conversations with the coaches and all of that, and you can see if there's sincere interest on both ends, that's where you can have, a good look at each institution and the programs, and then you can even narrow it down more from there. In terms of saying no to a coach, if it's early on, and a coach on the West Coast contacts you, and you have no interest in going to the West Coast. It's fine to text back or email back in terms of say like, hey coach, I appreciate your interest, but it doesn't quite fit the mold of what I'm looking at. If you narrow things down a little bit further in your process and you are a little bit closer and tighter to connected to a coach, and it's not going to be the right fit, then I would say do the respectful professional thing and do that with the phone call. Hey coach, appreciate your interest, but at this time I'm going to be going in a different direction. And coaches, we do our part to do that as well, some better than others. Some coaches may not get back to you. I'm not a big fan of that where, I don't like it when a player ghosts a coach. I don't think it's appropriate for a coach to ghost a player. So, if we're going to go in a different direction, we'll let that particular player know as well. So, I think that's the type of professional that's going to be expected on both sides. But, no one wants to waste anybody's time. So, if it's not a right fit, and you know that at that particular point, or, you get an offer, but another program's giving you a better offer, or it's just going to be a better fit for other reasons, follow that up with a phone call and just say, hey, appreciate your understanding and all your interest during this time, but at this point, ready to move in a different direction.
Okay. Anthony, the transfer portal is something that we hear about a lot these days in college athletics. I am sure it's changed women's college soccer and men's college soccer. Can you talk about the transfer portal, what it is, and some rules around the transfer portal and how it's impacted your program?
Well, I think it's changed college athletics. I know with basketball, it's really changed them. It's because we're going to speak to NIL, I think, next. But I would say, the transfer portal is basically if you go to a school and you're not sure now that was the right fit for you, you can go to your compliance officer and request to go on the transfer portal. And they have a couple windows that allow you to play in the next semester. There's a window in December, and there's a window in May. And if you go into the portal during those windows, it allows you to play in the next semester. Now, every school is a little different, but typically once you go on the portal, if you're on any kind of athletic aid, that could be pulled for the next semester, not the semester that you're in. So that's a risk you'll have to take. I know there was a number last year, maybe, that over 50% of kids that went on the portal did not find another place to play. So I think it just shows that you have to do a little bit more research and try to. It's almost like getting married, right? If possible, you just want to do it once. You know what I mean? So I think you want to really do the research and make sure you find the right place. Now, it could be a coach left or something it just wasn't the right fit, and that always happens. But I think making a rash decision and committing early, sometimes this is what's happening. Kids are committing too early at times, not doing the research, not going through the process, not really knowing enough about the school, the coaching staff, academics, and they just wanted to commit for the social media post and get it out there so they can get 1,000 likes, but then they got to go live it for 4 years. So I think just doing more research and making sure that the right fit, it is the fit. It's not necessarily the name of the school, it's the fit for you. And hopefully, I'm hoping that we see a decrease in the number of kids jumping on the portal. We've been fortunate at our program the last couple of years, but I've seen programs go to like the third round of the NCAA tournament and have 8 or 9 kids on the portal. It's crazy right now. So I would just say do your research with it, because it's definitely not a position you want to be in, to have to change schools after a year or two.
Neil, anything to add?
Yeah, just to echo Anthony, do your research as much as you can. Don't rush the process. Find out what program's going to make you happy, where you're going to really enjoy the school. And if you do that, I think that really eliminates a lot of the concerns for wanting to transfer later on. One thing to keep in mind, there are a number of fifth-year transfers. That is still going to be the case this year, and also for 24. That won't happen in 25. So the reason for those fifth years is because of that extra year that people got during the COVID season, during that year. So in 2025, you'll see a lot less of that in terms of fifth year transfers, people utilizing a fifth year, say to start grad school or just to play a fifth year at the institution they're already at. So that will lessen a bit, but I think the portal's still going to have quite an effect. But just to say what Anthony said, take your time, do your research, get it right once, so you don't have to do it again.
Great. Anthony, name, image, and likeness, NIL. Can you, again, it's a word we hear a lot these days, especially more so basketball and football, but can you talk about exactly what it is and has it affected your program and men's soccer in general?
What it is, I guess student athletes are finally able to receive compensation, not for basically, like, if there's a company that wants them to promote their clothing line. They can wear their clothing line on Instagram, and that company might, give them clothes. It might give them money, like a stipend. They can't represent the university on there. Like they can't be promoting a cell phone carrier while wearing a UMBC polo. You know what I mean? So there are some rules with it. I think you're seeing it more at the Power 5 football level, basketball, where kids are millionaires. Like a quarterback at Alabama 2 years ago made like $900,000. I haven't seen that in soccer yet. I do think it's going to come into it at some smaller scale initially, but I think there will be that big donor out there that loves soccer, and I think it's going to happen. I know there's more Power 5 schools on the women's side than there are on the men's that have soccer. So maybe Neil would speak to it a little differently, but I know on the men's side, I haven't run into that yet, but I do see some version of that trickling down to soccer in the near future.
Neil?
Yeah, and on the women's side, again, we haven't quite seen as much of this in women's soccer as say football or basketball. So I think we're all kind of in this wait and see approach. They've made these changes to the transfer portal. They've made these changes and adjustment to the NIL, and all of us are kind of trying to figure this out and see where it goes. I heard an analogy. It's like you're trying to build an airplane and fly it at the same time. So we're kind of all learning what this is going to look like. But if anyone does get an opportunity to get compensated by whatever means, you can have that conversation with your compliance, with your coaches, just to make sure everything fits, that you're not running into any particular issues. But we haven't seen as much of it on the women's soccer side, but I do think as this continues to grow and evolve, we're going to see it more and more.
Okay, 2 questions left, and then I'll open up to everybody. College ID camps, very popular these days. Just about every player is getting invitations to college ID camps. Some are getting invitations from all across the country. Is there a better format for a college ID camp for players? Do you have any thoughts on that? So there's a college ID camp where there's just that school hosting it and just that coaching staff that is running a college ID camp. Then you have college ID camps where there's sometimes 10 schools or more that are all represented. Is there one that you think is a little bit better? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what I would just say is be picky. And if you're going to go into a college prospect clinic, and you're going there and you haven't had communication with the coach, know that probably there's a pretty good chance that the coach has already contacted and had communication with maybe 10 or 15 different prospects already that will be at that clinic. I know with these clinics, they cost a lot of time, energy, travel, the monetary costs. So I would say just be really picky. Again, I say go back to the important factors for you as far as the academics, the location, the level of soccer. And then if that's a program that is of high interest, then that's one you can choose to go to. I do hear about kids that go to 10, 12 prospect clinics a year on top of everything else that they're doing. And to me, that's just overkill. So be selective. If you know that the coach has, you've had a conversation, on June 15th or afterwards, or you've received some kind of communication specifically, whether a mailing or something like that about that clinic, yeah, then there's probably some interest on the other side. But at that point, I think those would be the ones that you could choose to go to. As far as the larger, smaller ones, like at Binghamton, we cap it at 45 kids, and it's just our coaching staff. And the reason we do that is that, we want every kid to get a fair look. It's a one-day clinic. For the ones that have 8 to 10 schools, again, you got to make a decision on that, in terms of, okay, are there schools actually that are going to be attending, that are going to be of interest to me? If you're going to a clinic where there's going to be 300 kids and it's just that one particular college staff, it's going to be difficult to be seen unless they already know about you. So again, just be somewhat choosy and selective as far as clinics to attend.
Okay. Anthony?
I think Neil hit on some great points. We're kind of similar with our model as well. We do like these 3-hour like IDs a few times a year, and it's our staff there running it. We have recently had some interest from schools that asked if they could come. We haven't opened it up yet, but I think it's something we're talking about just because we're in a highly populated area with a lot of schools. And there are, D1, D2, and D3 prospects that are showing up at our ID stuff. So I think it's something we're considering for the future. I definitely wouldn't go on the ID camp tour. On top of everything else, it's expensive. I think it's good to go to one early that's maybe in your area just to experience it. And then from there, I would be a little bit more selective, as Neil said. Like if you really are interested in the school, then I would definitely get on the campus. But I wouldn't go to like a monster camp of 300 kids, as Neil said, and just so you could say you went to this school's camp. It doesn't, and then don't put that on your resume. Like that's not something that college coaches go, oh, that's cool. You must be pretty good. You went to their camp. Like that doesn't, if you paid, you got in, right? So that's not something, save your money and go somewhere where you think that you're actually interested in. Now saying that, if you are, for example, looking at the Ivy League, right? And that's your academic background, and that's what you want to do. Some of those camps will have schools from the NESCAC, which is like the D3 Ivy, basically. Schools like Amherst and Tufts and schools like that are outstanding academic institutions. They'll recruit the Ivy League camps, because if a kid doesn't maybe make an Ivy League, get recruited by an Ivy League, but they're really close, they could be an impact player in the NESCAC. Which, if you're you're getting a great education either way, but I think it's all about the fit. So I think, and from that standpoint, if you're specifically looking at a school that has a certain academic offering, Ivy League type of offering, for example, then I think having those kind of camps where there's multiple schools there helps you. If you're kind of more open to different types of schools and sizes and areas and stuff like that, then maybe you don't need that.
Okay, last question I have, real quick, and you both talked, I think, a little bit about this, but just recruiting mistakes that you've seen as a college coach. Are there one or two that kind of stand out that you see?
Yeah, for me, the biggest one is just rushing the process. Take your time, do your research. Like if there are 5 or 6 schools that are going to be a good fit, see them, visit them. If you want to attend their clinics, maybe not all of them, but some of them, take your time, and then you'll be able to make a really good decision. Where I see kids make poor decisions is they just rush it. They want to do it because they want to do it. They want to get, like Anthony said, the social media likes, or they want to do it because they just want to get the process over. This should be the best 4 years of your life. So take your time, and then you can compare and contrast. That's important. You'll find out what it is that you like. You'll find out what it is that you don't like, which is just as important. So take your time. Do not rush it. I see sometimes players get the first offer. Oh, the money's on the table. I've got to take it now. No, you don't. So if coach wants you, they're going to wait, and they'll allow you to explore your opportunities. They're not going to wait forever, but take your time, and then in the end, you'll be able to make a really good decision. The ones that are on the transfer portal, a lot of them just did it too quick, and it's not what they thought it was going to be, and now they're back to square one. After having done it already. So just take your time and do your research.
I agree with all that. I think that maybe a good little saying is you never know who's watching. So like when you're out there, and I know Neil hit on this a little bit, we both said we like high character kids, and I don't know of a college coach that doesn't. And you don't want the perception of you to be wrong just because you had a bad moment. But, we might not be able to see you play, 10 times. So just how you act after a loss, how you act when the referee doesn't give you the right call, how I think those are the things that can define your character in that moment, which may or may not be accurate. So how you never know who's watching. Sometimes we'll go early and watch the warm up. You know what I mean? We want to see what's going on. We'll stick around after and see how people are acting with their teammates. You know what I mean? Are you happy for your teammates when they do something good? Or are you kind of off on your own? So you never know there. I think the other thing is own the recruiting process. I think one of the things that turns me off is when a parent sends me an email acting like they're their kid, but they're using their own email address, the parent email address. I think as a kid, you're in high school now, you got to own the process. Even when you go on a visit, you should do more talking than your parent, if your parent joins you. I think the whole idea is to start building that relationship with the coaching staff, and parents are part of that and they support you, but you have to own the process. You return the emails, you return the texts. I think you talk to people like David in your club and get insight and information on top of your club coach and advice. So that would be the two things I would say.
Okay, just got a couple minutes left. So anybody that wants to ask questions can send a question in. There's been a number that have already come in. There's one that I missed earlier. Neil, why don't you take this real quick? It's a good one. If a player emails a coach and doesn't hear back from a college coach, does that mean the college coach is not interested in the player?
Yeah, so I would be persistent to a certain degree. If you don't hear back over and over, 2-3 emails, then yeah, that probably does mean, more than likely that coach isn't interested. Again, I think from the coach's side, it's for us to be professionals, we should be getting back to you. If you really want to follow up, have your club coach contact that college coach. Because sometimes college coaches just don't want to get back to players to give them bad news, but they're willing to do that talking to another club coach. So if you really want to follow up with that even more, have your club coach kind of be a liaison and get that information.
Okay, thank you. We just got about a minute left. If there's any other questions, feel free to send in a question. If not, we'll wrap this up. Okay, I think that's it. Listen, guys, that was great. A lot of knowledge there. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. And I really appreciate your time. I say this every time we bring in college coaches. I know you guys are super busy. So spending an hour with us on a Sunday night, we really, really appreciate it. And we wish both you guys the best of luck with your recruiting and then with your fall seasons as well. So thanks again. We'll see you guys soon. And for everybody that connected, thanks for your interest, and we'll see you on the fields again soon.
Okay. Thank you, Loudon.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right.